here. Hi, this is Jim Spohrer. This is our ONNX working group call for ONNX in a Foundation. Today's call is with the Eclipse Foundation, and thank you, Mike and Paul, for making time. Ryan is my co-chair of the working group that the ONNX team community has started to investigate different foundation home possibilities for ONNX, so thanks for making time. I did send out a little agenda that we would like to go through, and the start of the agenda is just a brief introduction. So again, I'm Jim Spohrer from IBM and one of the co-chairs of the working group. And Ryan, did you want to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, sure. I'm Ryan Loney. I'm a product manager at Intel, working on our AI inference accelerator software, and excited to hear more about the different foundation options. And I'm glad you guys took time to come present to us today. Thank you.
Great, Ryan. And Mike and Paul, do you want to introduce yourself?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yep. So Paul Buck, VP of Community Development at the Eclipse Foundation, focused on new communities, growing existing communities, and overall health of the organization.
And I'm Mike Milinkovich, the Executive Director of the Eclipse Foundation.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. And
great, thanks.
Yeah, I think, Mike, you and I have had a few conversations about AI and the Eclipse Foundation in the past, so thanks for so quickly agreeing to have this call when I reached out about the ONNX community, which is a very exciting community that's Microsoft, Facebook, and Amazon started to create a representation for deep learning and machine learning graphs and representations. Oh, it looks like Adam joined.
Hello. Yes.
Hi, Adam.
I'm a little late.
No worries. We're just getting introduced, Adam. Do you want to introduce yourself? And by the way, we're recording the meeting because there were several people from the ONNX community who couldn't join.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Adam, the co-founder of Skyline, representing the Deep Learning 4J project for Eclipse and kind of helping with some of the AI stuff happening at the foundation.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. And so, Mike, again, I think, a lot of people in the ONNX community, certainly the people from IBM and some other places know of the Eclipse Foundation, but we thought we would, just go through some basic questions for the community. And if you could just share a little bit of the history of the Eclipse Foundation and, what its mission is for, onboarding new types of projects, that would be really helpful start.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. So the Eclipse Foundation has been around for 15 years. I think we can I think we might be the very first 501c6 open source organization that's still around. Originally, our roots were in software development tools. To this day, to a large number of particularly Java developers, if you say the word Eclipse, they think, oh yeah, the Java IDE. However, as other institutions have done, we have evolved over time to become a very large tent hosting a great number of open source projects and technologies. We're up to about 375 projects today, 275 organizational members of the Eclipse Foundation, and our technologies span from our origins in tools to advanced simulations for testing artificial intelligence in autonomous driving, to deep learning for J, which we mentioned. Of course, a pretty strong presence in cloud native Java through our initiatives in Jakarta EE and the microprofile, Vertex, Jetty, and the likes. And very strong in IoT as well, arguably the center of gravity for open source in IoT and Edge, with almost 40 different projects and about 3 million lines of code focused on IoT and Edge. So very wide, very big tent of projects. Starting about a decade ago, we started organizing what we call working groups, which provide focus on particular topic areas. Each working group is a self-governing consortia under the banner of the Eclipse Foundation with its own charter, its own steering committee. The projects have to follow the Eclipse development process. However, there's many degrees of freedom in terms of how each working group can govern its affairs. Starting about 2 years ago, when Oracle announced that Java EE was going to be moving to the Eclipse Foundation, we became involved in creating a new and modern specification process based on open source principles for use by Eclipse projects and working groups. And I think that's actually a feature that's of particular interest by the way, I'm sorry, do you guys pronounce it ONNX or ONNX, or how do you actually say it?
I always say ONNX. I hope I'm doing it right.
Yeah, our lawyers say ONNX, but I say ONNX.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah. Okay. So as I understand it, ONNX is primarily a specification. That's its major raison d'être, and we can help support that through a specialization of the Eclipse Foundation specification process. So the process that we came up with was, by design, a template which is intended to be refined by each specification team that wants to adopt it. And so I think it would provide an excellent template for ONNX. It has all of the attributes that you would expect from an open specification process. We've refined all of our licensing agreements, including all of our contributor and committer agreements and our IP policy, to make sure that patent rights flow appropriately to independent implementations of the specification. We've crafted a very liberal Eclipse Foundation specification license that's modeled after the W3C license. And for assuming that ONNX has some sort of testing capabilities for compliance to some sort of TCK or the like, we also have a binary TCK license to make sure that when people are making compatibility statements and branding statements, that they're basing it off of the correct version of the TCK. The assumption in our spec process is that all of the artifacts under development are maintained in open source under either the EPL, the Apache, or the BSD license. But then once you actually go final with a specification and a TCK, there are good reasons to use licenses other than open source licenses for those final versions of those documents and artifacts. And we've got experience. Actually, the timing is excellent because this morning Jakarta EE8 went live. We're done. We can now say that we have shipped a very large and important set of specifications to the industry through this process. So we think that we've demonstrated its value and utility.
Great. So the main reason why ONNX is searching for a nonprofit foundation at this point is various contributors and members of the community are starting to make product roadmap plans that include ONNX. And so rapidly getting the IP and assets into a vendor-neutral home that can own the IP and assets is the main reason. So could you say a little bit about the ability of the Eclipse Foundation and the process? How long does the process take for organizations like Microsoft and Facebook and others to contribute code and IP and assets to a working group in the Eclipse Foundation or a project in the Eclipse Foundation?
Well, based on 15 years of experience in this job, I can tell you that it's exactly as fast as your lawyers want it to be. More seriously, it is perfectly realistic to think that you could establish a working group with a specification process that's completely functional, within a couple of months. It really depends on the details, and it in particular depends on, how can I put this, the goodwill of the parties and the lawyers involved. If there is one, fully engaged party that, for whatever reason, is in their interest to cause this delay, every open process can run afoul of I wouldn't even call them a bad actor. Let's just say a deeply self-interested actor.
Got it.
But the process is specifically designed to be fairly quick, right, and fairly lightweight. That is the design point of the process. And so so for example, if you look at the Jakarta EE specification process, it is a specialization of the Eclipse Foundation specification process template. I think it's something less than 20 lines of text, right? Okay. So the specializations can be very clear and very quick. And all of the contributor and committer agreements are set up. The membership agreements are set up. We have a participation agreement template that could be fixed up in literally a day. So there's similarly for a draft charter for the working group. We have all of these artifacts. The process can absolutely run very quickly if everybody is working together to make that happen. Yeah, I think that's the case. It seems to be the case. I think it's a very well-run community from my perspective, and everybody seems to be very well aligned. But I'm curious, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, Intel, NVIDIA, those are the 5 on the steering committee right now. Are all of their lawyers, quote unquote, trained up on the Eclipse Foundation, or have you done things with all of those 5 firms? Not all 5. So IBM and Intel, I would say, are quite well trained on all of our processes. Intel, as we speak, is in the process of joining 2 additional working groups. Their attorneys are going to be quite familiar with our participation agreements and so on. So I think that those 2 in particular are well trained. Microsoft is an existing member and has been a member of the Jakarta EE working group for quite a while and has participated in many of the activities there. So certainly within some portions of their team, they're familiar with what we've got. Unfortunately, neither Facebook nor NVIDIA are members of the Eclipse Foundation as of this moment. Okay. What about Amazon, did you say? Mike, did you say Amazon? Oh, sorry. Amazon, NVIDIA, and Facebook. Okay. None of those 3 are members. Although I can't get into details, but let's say that one of those 3 is actively reading all of the same materials for different reasons. Understood. I think it's interesting that, you've had a long relationship with Intel and IBM, and Ryan and I are the co-chairs of this group, so that's something, I guess. So I guess the next question, we've been well trained by our lawyers to be efficient getting into nonprofit foundations, I think is the punchline there. So the ONNX community, as I said, is self-governing. It's made good strides towards open governance. There's good management, good steering committee, good communication, good, everything. I have to say the community is self-governing in a very, very positive way. I think the biggest complaint is, pull requests aren't getting merged fast enough and being reviewed. That was about the only complaint I heard at the last community meeting, which is a standard complaint. So how does, is the ability for ONNX community to stay self-governing? Can you comment a little bit about the ability and process for that to happen?
Mike?
So I'm assuming that ONNX today is basically run as a GitHub repository.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Ryan. Right? Ryan, that's correct?
Yeah. Do you have,
Yeah,
I'm assuming
they have a lot more involvement than that, but yes.
so,
we do have
yeah,
regular meetings and face-to-face contact and all that too, but yeah.
Sure. But is there a CLA in place?
Yes.
There's a CLA in
What,
place,
like-
but yes, we need
We-
to have a foundation for a legal entity
Yeah,
right now.
that's
So
one of the,
that's one of the keys.
yeah, that's one of the things we would like to move away from is the CLA. I believe there's several members who said they'd like to move away from it once it's in a nonprofit foundation. Did I say that right, Ryan? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, I was muted, but yes, that is the preference of our lawyers. But if if we aren't able to move away from a CLA, we would like to have a licensee that is an ONNX Foundation, a nonprofit. So.
Yeah. Okay. So and what is the license, the contribution and distribution license at the moment? Is it Apache?
Yeah, I believe so. Do you know, Ryan, for sure? we got our issues as well, Mike.
I think that I don't think that it is, and I think that was one of the issues from legal is that it's not currently Apache.
Let me go check right now.
Okay. So the way the Eclipse Foundation is set up is, first of all, about half of our projects and activities are hosted on GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very familiar with that. We do insist on contributors signing the Eclipse Contribution Agreement, which is basically a wrapper around the Linux Foundation's DCO. And basically all it says is, so there's no rights given to the Eclipse Foundation per se by contributors. It's just an agreement that says that we know we're making the contributions under the project license, and that when we sign off our contributions, that we are signing off on the DCO, and here's our information for your record keeping. That's all it says.
The licensee would be the Linux Foundation?
No. The licensee is the licensee is recipients of whatever contribution is. So there's no assignment of any rights to the Eclipse Foundation. We assert ownership over the completed specification document as part of the our spec license, but we're basically saying that we own the collective copy work on the spec document, since we hosted all of the processes that were involved in putting together the specification license. So I noticed it's MIT license.
Looks like
So,
MIT. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So from my perspective, there are many lawyers with many opinions about how these kinds of things need to be put together. The advantage of the Apache software license over the MIT license is that the patent license is explicit and royalty free. However, and the Apache license is not bad as a spec license, but there's basically there's no way that if you have a specification published under any open source license, the license grants specifically say that you can change the specification itself, right? Mm-hmm. That is actually that's an attribute of any and all open source licenses. So what our spec license says is, and the only time we use it is when the spec goes final. So, all of the attribute, everything works under open source until you actually hit the final version of a version of the spec that you want to release as final. And then when you do that, then we put on the spec license, and it says this thing is copyright Eclipse Foundation, and anybody is free to implement this using whatever license they want, including proprietary, but you cannot change the spec document itself. Mm-hmm. And we actually think that for specifications, that's actually a pretty good way to go. The other thing I'll say is that, again, maybe the lawyers that were participating in our discussions, and there are lawyers from IBM, Red Hat, Oracle, and others. Maybe they were particularly conservative, but in the construction of a specification whose goal is to enable independent implementations, I've always heard it argued that it's to everyone's advantage that there be some form of CLA, some form of accurate record keeping on where are the origins of all contributions, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why we've constructed things the way that we've constructed them. I would also mention that, I forgot when I was talking about the Eclipse contributor agreement beforehand, one of the things that we added when we were constructing our spec process that I forgot to mention is that our contributor agreements now say, any copyrightable materials that you contribute to a specification, you permit the Eclipse Foundation to relicense that under the Eclipse Foundation spec license. So that's part of our standard contribution agreement. Again, we've spent a lot of time basically optimizing open source workflows that still allows you to deliver what even the most conservative of lawyers would consider a very well protected, well licensed specification document, which will enable independent implementations.
Got it. Okay, great. I think those are the major questions. There were a couple additional Q&As that I had, like, where is there already ONNX adoption or future potential synergies with foundation projects, and maybe,
Yeah, and actually, maybe if Adam could jump in here. Adam is the project leader for the Eclipse Deep Learning for J project. So he's going to be more familiar with ONNX than Polarize. So Adam, please take it away.
Yeah, so actually, as a community, we're actually heavily involved in TF Java, Keras, as well as implementing ONNX support as well. So we're kind of like we're kind of more aiming for, think of what the niche Cafe 2 aims for. It meets Spark, Apache Spark, and kind of the big data ecosystem. So I think there's a lot of so I'm obviously going to sell a little bit of kind of the Eclipse Foundation and what they've done for us in terms of AI projects and a lot of the freedom that they've afforded us as a community. They're allowing us to start looking at different things like working groups and driving different synergies across actually the application stack and the enterprise. So I think in terms of ONNX itself, we'll be adding support for ONNX as well. We mainly have TensorFlow import right now, but we're in Keras import, but we'll be adding ONNX import as well. So that's one area, and I think bridging into like real enterprise adoption, I think Eclipse could really help streamline that. So they've also really bridged well into the kind of the cloud native ecosystem, Kubernetes and a lot of that overlap. So I think if you want mainstream adoption of enterprise while still working with a foundation that's able to deal with large companies, I think moving into mainstream AI adoption, I think Eclipse will be key for that. So the application stack is where Eclipse, I think, is very strong, and why we picked the Eclipse Foundation for DL4J itself. We actually weighed the Linux Foundation as well as the Apache Foundation, and we went with Eclipse for the reason that not only do they have the enterprise adoption, but they're also a lot more familiar with the software stack for Java developers, and because that's kind of our niche. That being said, like I said, they bridge really well into other parts of the ecosystem with middleware. Okay. So enterprise developers was definitely the main audience that we were targeting here.
Got it. Great. And I know Dan Bandera on IBM's team. He told me to look at some of the edge AI work with the auto industry, I think, that's going on in Eclipse Foundation. I thought there would be synergies there. I don't know if anybody can comment on that or not.
Yeah, so in particular, there are two working groups that have started up in the last couple of months. OpenGenesis and OpenADX. So OpenGenesis is the prime mover behind that is an organization called TÜV SÜD, which is a major part of the certification and safety qualification infrastructure in Central Europe. And the mission for OpenGenesis is to create an open source infrastructure for safety qualifying autonomous driving systems.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so, which is obviously ultimately about safety qualifying AIs.
Mm-hmm.
And neural networks. Now, and the other one is OpenADX. The prime movers behind that are Bosch, with IBM, Red Hat, Microsoft, and others. And what it wants to build out is a end-to-end tool chain for building autonomous driving systems, and of which things like safety qualification, data protection, data replication, and so on are all going to be an integral part of the tool chain. And when I say tool chain, I don't just mean like an IDE. I mean everything from verification and test analysis, system requirements gathering, the whole enchilada for delivering safety qualified systems of high degrees of complexity.
Yeah, great. Thank you. The one last thing is there is ONNX does have some core values. I'm trying to look them up right now. Ryan, I don't know if you have it handy, but I know that they're basically principles about speed and openness and transparency and all of the things I imagine that are just bread and butter for the Eclipse Foundation.
That sounds like standard operating procedure around here.
Yeah, that's certainly what Dan Bandera, who's my IBM colleague, most familiar with Eclipse Foundation, certainly told me a lot about that. So I think that's really all we have. Just so you know what our next steps are, we're doing this interview with leaders from the major foundations that are being considered, which are Eclipse, Apache, Linux Foundation AI, and we're also considering MLPerf, ML Commons. So those are the four major ones that people have suggested so far. Ryan and I wanted to just have an informal conversation with each so that we could gather some of the basic information and take that back to the steering committee. And then there's going to be, there'll be some voting and things like that. But I imagine, we may want to reach out again, and we do plan to post this recording onto working group, ONNX working group website, so anybody in the community can go in and listen to it. So thank you so much for letting us have this opportunity to talk to you today and record this. And Ryan, I don't know if you have anything else to say.
No, I think that's good. And yeah, we're going to share the recording. So yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks, Adam. Really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Yeah.
No, our pleasure.
Thanks, folks.
Yeah,
Okay. We'll be circling back, but thank you very much for this initial information. It's really super helpful to us. Thank you.
All right.
yeah, look forward to the follow-up.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.